Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Today our opportunity of the day, the reel to be worked on is the Accurate Tern 300, a smaller framed fishing reel made in the US. And before I get started, I always like to test. Let's get it in the free spool and see if it's working and all, and do things like that. It seems to be. It's a little tight. And I think the fellow told me it was going to be tight, and that's why he wanted it serviced. Well, we're going to start by taking off the exterior parts. One of my complaints about this is you need small tools. They're Allen keyed centers, and of course there's two different sizes rather than the one, just to make it fun, I guess. And in my case, I need one from a micro driver and one from kind of a standard bit set that I have. So we're going to take off the handle and the exterior pieces and the side plate. We'll show you how the reel is made, how it comes apart, how to service it, and how to put it back together again. And well, while we do that, I'm going to encourage you to subscribe to my channel. And if you do subscribe to my channel, please use the notification button. That'll let you know where and when I'm posting the videos, and you can make a decision as to whether that's a video that you want to see. I work on all kinds of reels. Today we're working on a lever drag reel. It's predominantly used in saltwater environments around here, but tomorrow it may be a freshwater spinning reel followed by a bass reel. You never quite know what's coming on because, well, it's you're looking over my shoulder in my shop as reels come in to be serviced, and a good portion of the ones that I show here have been the subject of videos because somebody dropped them off at the shop for service. And that's what's happened here. Carmen from the Saltwater Anglers of Bergen County asked me to service these reels. It's a local fishing club near here, and I'm working on these for him. So you need to take that cap off, and then you need to take the E-clip off in order to get access to the inners, because you can't, generally you can't take this handle off without first removing that E-clip. Alright, we'll see if we can just walk this up. If we can't, what we'll do is we'll bring it up the other way, but in this case this one works fine. He likes his leveraged handles, and that's one of them. He also asked me to get a leverage handle for his Calcutta reel, and I was happy to go and get the Comexis product, which is a nice handle option for those reels. Well, when I take my pieces and parts off, I like to put them into a parts tray. I use the bottom of a fast food container for that purpose. And I recommend that you have a system that you can organize around so that you know where to go for the parts when it's time to put the reel back together again. This is an adjuster. You can usually work this off by hand. That's what's on the underside of your star adjuster there. It'll fit in that cavity, and there's a spring between them. And when you're working on reels like this, I always recommend that you take pictures. There's a lot of pieces and components that come off of these, and if you take the pictures, you'll know the sequence and the way to put them back together again. So for example, on this one, underneath that adjuster nut is a pair of washers. These are tension washers. They're not flat, and you need to know they go next. And then I think this one may be a bearing. If not, we'll find out when we pull that shaft off. You don't have to pull your adjuster off. Oh yes you do, I'm sorry, I'm not sure what I was thinking. I'm going to take that adjuster off, and underneath that adjuster, notice there's a little cap right there. Let's go ahead and put that back on. Put that right in the cavity there. Now we can take the 4 case screws off that are holding the rest of this on. And to do that, I had to switch over. This is an M8, I think. And again, be careful with these. They're small screws. They tend to bounce and fly, and well, easily are lost. So I like to take those screws and put them into a corner of my case. And that'll give us access to the inside of this reel. This is a single speed reel. And it's appropriate for inshore fishing now in the ocean because the braid gives you so much more capacity. So you don't need the big reels any longer if you don't want to fish with the big reels. If you want to go to the light or ultralight tackle for inshore ocean fishing, you can do that with these reels. They are braid ready, and a lot of folks, well, that's kind of the whole idea behind it. All right, those 4 screws are in the corner of my thing, and as you can see, it just hit the ground, and well, it's ready to come off. Inside here, we have another set of screws that are going to remove the plate, so we'll leave that for a moment. We're going to come over to the side that has the spool. And this one is not a lever drag, this is a star drag, so you're not going to find anything fancy inside. And I hope that Carmen doesn't mind, but I'm taking off the leader for this just because it's always difficult for me to come back in when loading the pieces and parts to do this efficiently without trapping the heavy line like that. So I know recommend to Carmen, but I always recommend that you change your line when you're having your reel serviced anyway. And I'm not in the business of selling lines, so I don't profit from that. What you may profit from is the fact that line tends to break down. Some lines break down faster than others. It's about stretch when fighting fish. It's about UV damage from just being out and exposed to the sunlight. And it's about, well, just general use, wear and tear and the like, how many fish you have on, what kind of guides are on your pole, all kinds of things like that. That, well, it just isn't worth taking a chance. So if you're having your reel serviced on an annual basis, braid for a reel like this is just not that expensive, and it makes all the sense in the world to go ahead and change it out. There's a bearing on the back, so let's oil that bearing. We'll put the spool into the case. Check the back end of the case. There's a little bit of dirt and debris in there, so I'm going to grab a paper towel. Kind of wipe that down. And all you need to do on this one, on this side, is make sure that your click mechanism gets a little bit of oil. And I like to oil rather than grease those pieces. Some folks prefer grease. I like the oil because it doesn't catch the contaminants on it. Once you're done with that, the spool can go back in a case. That's big enough that I don't need to put that into the parts tray. We'll leave that off to the side, and we're going to come over here and remove the 4 screws that hold the baffle plate or the cap on underneath. Those are Phillips head screws, so we'll go ahead and take those out right now. And as we do, it's a good time to tell you to recommend this channel to friends if you're already subscribed. They will certainly appreciate seeing how reels are serviced, and I appreciate the additional subscriptions and the following. If you have any question on this reel or any reel in particular, if you want to leave it in the comment section, I do try to answer the questions. I'll tell you, I've had a couple of tough ones lately. Just because I'm not familiar with certain reels, somebody will ask me, how do you set the anti-reverse spring on a reel that I'm not familiar with? And well, it's kind of tough, but I do try to answer them, and I try to help you along if you're working on something and have tended to get stuck along the way. I try to give you some general advice anyway on how to get unstuck. All right, let's see what we can do to pull this out now. There we go. There's 4 screws. Those are going to go into the tray. Let's turn this upside down now. I think that's how it's going to work out. It is. Look at the massive gear on this. When you want to think about a high-speed reel, this is probably about as high speed as you're going to get. I didn't see the markings on the case here for the speed on this one. This is what's called a twin drag. You're going to have a drag set up on the front and the back. We'll show you how that works in a moment. And we're just going to spray this down here with a little bit of WD-40 penetrating oil. I don't care which one you use. This isn't an ad for WD-40, but happens to be the one that's in my hand at the moment. But I use penetrating oil as a degreaser. So just as you get the old grease in here, And again, I don't know if this has just been thrown off by the gears as it's been reeling, or if it's been intentionally put in there, maybe with the thought that you're somehow going to prevent oxidation on an aluminum case. I don't know, whatever it is. I do see it there, and I don't generally like it there, so we're going to remove it. All right, we'll take a little pick here because there is some grease that is accumulated around the stud that's going to work that jack. It'll release the free spool. So let's go ahead and do that. Put a little bit of oil up there. It's spinning on a little shaft, so just check it, work it in and out. Take a picture here. Maybe you're working on this reel and you've dislodged this spring. If you did, well, you're going to have to remove this clip to push that section out. Then you'll have a right angle on this clip underneath the eccentric. You're going to have to post it in there. Then the other side comes over here to this piece in the case. That's how that sets. We'll just show you how it works. This is in release mode. This is in crank mode. You'll see it when we put it, oh, you won't see it when we put it back together again because it closes up. It has that odd load from the back. All right, case is cleaned. This is your anti-reverse. You don't need to oil that or anything. You just want to make sure it's clean and clear of debris. There is a, I guess that whole thing is going to come through here. It's a seal. Let's go ahead and pull this out. The seal belongs on this side. Again, pictures help here. The seal goes in here, just like that. And when we go to put it back together again, because the shaft and the roller bearing are kind of working in tandem, let's go ahead and clean that. I'm going to use a cotton swab to do that. And then I like to keep this one separate because if you put it in now, it's hard to mesh the flat sides of the gear post with the flat side of this. That's how it's going to belong, so when we go to reinstall, we'll do it that way. Just going to turn those over for a moment. Here's your twin drag setup. It's got pressure plates on both sides. It's got a pressure plate on the front and the back. It's got a drag washer on the front and the back. It's got two in the center there. Underneath that we have our free spool, yoke, jack, and pinion gear setup. And this is very similar to the way that Newell uses their setup on this. This one's engaged at the moment. Let's see if I can't just pull this up and out. Well, I'm going to take my glove off. I don't normally like to take my glove off, but you're going to notice that we have a compressed spring under C-clips here holding this piece in place. Thinking this comes up, but it may go down. Yeah, there you go. So that's how it's going to work. It's going to sit in a neutral position here, and then when you need to release, it's going to pull up and out. That's going to pull this back and off of the spool. All right, I've taken my glove off so I can pull this E-clip off, and remember, there's a spring under there, so don't walk away. Be very cautious as to how you do this. And you're trying to manage two things here. You're trying to manage not having the clip fly, and you're trying to manage not having the spring fly. So there's your clip, there's your spring. I'm just going to go off to the side for a moment. Consider yourself lucky, take a deep breath, and it's time to do it again on this side. I like to keep my fingers over that as I do this. Just kind of peek around, make sure that I got it going in the right way. I know I have the E-clip off now. I've kept the tension on the spring. And we're done with the excitable moments for now. All right, those go into my parts tray. Now we can lift the rest of the mechanism up and out. We can also lift up and out on the jack. That's going to enable us to clean the rest of the pressure plate. I didn't see the max drag on this. I'm not quite certain what the exact amount is, but it's got to be pretty substantial because that's a large main gear. That's a large cavity for the drag washers, and you have two big drag washers in there. So I'm thinking that not only is it a high-speed reel, it's got good max drag behind it. All right, we've used fishing reel grease to go put that jack back in place. Now what we want to do is clean off the grease on the yoke. The yoke less so in terms of grease. What you need on the yoke is where the pinion gear is going to ride. Now on this, you're going to notice there's a flat side where the indentations seem relatively lower. Then you're going to notice that there's a ramp and a raise. That ramp and a raise goes to the back, like that. So the narrower side is up front. That's because on the jack you have ramps. They're going to pull that up. Okay, once you've inspected all the teeth, go to your grease. Make sure that it gets a nice coating of grease. That's part one. And we want to grab our yoke. When we do notice the yoke now, it's going to have a deeper ramp like this that faces in. And remember, when you do your pinion gear, that the slot which is going to anchor to the spool goes in. Then we can take this and we can lay that onto the two posts and lay it flat. Now, generally speaking, there's a little ramp involved there, so if you lay it flat, it's going to push this thing up. So you want to kind of stay away from that. This is your aha moment on the other side. You want to be very careful here as you go to reinstall the springs. Get your spring set, pull down on it, and grab it from one of the coils below. Keep it compressed so that you have access to the slot that's going to hold the E-clip. Grab your E-clip, get it started in that slot, like that. And if you don't have enough hand strength, go ahead and use the pliers to pull it in. And be careful, these things can fly. Just be patient, you will get it. And once you hear that click, you can release that spring. And you only have to do it one more time. So another deep breath, go find your spring. Go ahead and put it in. I like to pull it from lower on. That way I'm not affecting that top loop too much. I like to walk it down so that I have that spring out of that little groove. Just like that. Go ahead and get the other E-clip. We'll do it again. And try to do it by hand strength if you can, but if you don't have that hand strength, don't be afraid to go ahead and use the pliers to pull it in. All right, you're set on this now. Again, when this comes up, we should be able to pull this up now, probably with a tool. It's pulled that off and detach that from the spool, and that's how you get free spool. And again, when you push it in, this is the lever doing that trick instead of the point on my awl. It's that lever there is doing that pulling up and down. Well, now you're back engaged. All right, let's go over to the main gear then. Notice what you have here. You have a shaft that comes out. We have a dual drag system here. There's a lot of drag in this reel. This has got a ton of max drag. And you want to pay attention to how these drags are organized. They're organized by having the circular one in touching the pressure plate in the middle, and then having what would serve as a keyed drag on the outside of that. Well, this one looks like it's got a little bit of debris collected on it. The best thing to do with that is get a hard brush and pull out the old grease. That's all it usually is. It tends to not be wear. And if you pull it out, that's all you need to do. You don't need to grease these, but you do need to make sure they're clean. And for best grip, that's what you want to do. This is the side that this came out of. We're going to keep the sides the same. You're going to have the one, same thing, make sure it's a nice clean setup here. Then we have the one that anchors into that side. And while this one is the one that we'll put on last, because as I flip this pancake over, well, that'll just fall right off. I'm going to do the same thing here. On this side, you're going to have a little metal washer here. Let's just put that down for a moment. So let's show you what's going on this. Pressure plate can stay on there. That's nice and clean. Here's that little washer. So just remember that. We're going to do the same thing here. We'll clean off any of the old greases and dirt that might be on this. And set that into the center. This one goes in now. There's a hole there for that. I want to make sure that it seats properly, just like that. Now we're going to go for the middle one. And just like the other one, the keyed washer, one with all the points on it, is going to be the last in on this side. We'll do the same thing, get the old greases off. Place that down. All right, now we want to line up the keyed washers here so that we can clear the shoulder on this. Just like that. And then this goes over the top. So that's your twin drag. Twin because, well, it's got one on each side of it. Then let's go into the middle now. I've been checking this along. I haven't told you about that, but check along. Make sure that all of the teeth are clean of debris. They are. If there's any old dirt or grease, use that brush that we were just using to knock that off of the drag washers. Use that same brush to knock it out of the teeth here. Get a good amount of grease onto it. Get some grease onto the shaft of the reel. And then we can take the whole piece, put that on and merge it with the pinion gear here that wants to kind of slip away from me here. That's it. One thing's left, and that is the top end of this where we're going to put the E-clip in the handle. So next up then we want to grab that the little collar for your anti-reverse, and that's all that's done on the inside of the reel. You have a clean case, put a little bit of oil onto the inside bearing here, so we've oiled both bearings, we've oiled the eccentric, and what you want to do now is you want to set your eccentric to low, because that's the position that we have the little slot where this is going to merge into. If you have trouble putting the case back on, it's because that little eccentric piece is not lining up, and well, you just may need to take 2 or 3 tries to do that. Let's go ahead and put this back on, see how we did with that. I think we did pretty good. We want to line up the holes for the screws, and I'm going to keep pressure on there right now. I'm going to pull the free spool lever back, and that should move this out and in. And you can see it's moving it in and out. So we know we have that little slot lined up properly. Let's go get the 4 screws from the corner of the tray and put this back on. And again, taking pictures, it may seem like, yeah, oh, I don't need to do that at this point kind of thing, but you know, you're going to get a phone call, something's going to happen, and all of a sudden you're going to lay the reel down and come back, and then you're going to have that moment that says, geez, I've kind of forgot where I was, and maybe you'll even leave a comment for me in the video saying help. But the point is if you take the picture at critical junctures, you're going to be able to establish parts orientation and the sequence that you took them off on, and so on. Now, you don't have to do a video. You can use a still camera, the digital camera. You can use your cell phone. Doesn't really matter much what you use, but I do recommend it. Of course, I'm taking videos. That's my pictures along the way. Don't think that I haven't referenced them on more than one occasion. I have. So this is kind of experience speaking here. All right, all of that's working. I wanted to pull that in when I go to mount that to the case, because you still have to merge that gear with this shoulder here on the spool, and it just makes it easier when you put the case back together to do it that way. All right, we're going to go ahead and grab that. We're going to align our 3 screw holes. Make sure that you have a nice, solid, tight line across. Now these I just get nervous about because, well, they're small screws. Not terrible, but they are small. And I have the 4 small screws, and I have the screw for the handle. We know that the 3 screws that come out of this go right back in here, and they have a longer throw to them than the one on the other side. Let's go ahead and take that micro screwdriver. I'm not lined up exact, so take a moment to sight it. Make sure you're in there exact. There we go. And then the small one's going on this side. Again, take the pictures, you'll know where the differences are. And if you have big hands like I do, well, sometimes you get challenged with these. Just take your time, be patient. That's the second one. Go over to the corner down here. Let's go do that one next for balance. And then we'll finish up the top end of the reel. Give it a test, see how we did. This is 3. One more. Sometimes you can start them this way. So this one is just a basic Harbor Freight internet kind of micro driver set. It's nothing fancy. And I don't use them an awful lot. I actually bought this thing, I think, because of the way that the Shimano ones were set up. Regardless, it does come in use from time to time, and I recommend that if you work on a lot of reels, you'll want to do that. Here's your spool adjuster. And once you finish tightening that, give it a spin. You're in free spool now. Give it a spin. Make sure that it spins nicely, which it does. And then just to test, put it back into main gear and see if it turns the shaft, which it does. So we're in good shape there. All right. Now what we want to do is take those 2 spring washers that were underneath. These are beveled. They're not a flat washer. Don't make them flat. I like to turn them upside down so that the bowl side of it is facing me on the one, and then reverse it for the second one. Then we have our little carrier for that spring. There's 2 sides to this nut. Make sure that the nut side that has the indentation in it is facing up, because that's going to hold the spring in place. Tighten that down by hand. You can pretty much tighten that down quite a ways. And I'm spinning the shaft right now, so sometimes you can either hold the shaft and turn the nut. I'm not sure if that's threading properly, so let's back it off. Seems to be. Just finish tightening it down as much as you can. The more room you put to the bottom, the easier it's going to be to set the spring. Spring is up next. That sits in that channel, followed by your adjuster. And then you need to turn the adjuster and press down so that you get the clearance. Then we have the washer that actually goes underneath the handle. Get that seated. And get your handle on. This is where you need more than one hand. You can probably clear the E-clip with this, because I'm looking at the way that the ridge is, but I like to put the handle on first. And we got one more of those E-clips. Again, we want to find the groove, seat the clip into the groove, and then pull that in with your pliers. And now I'm losing my grip on that, but that's okay. Let's put that down, and we can grab the nut to get started to hold the handle down. Hand thread this. It's absolutely the best way to avoid cross stripping it. I know you can't see this very well. Some things are just not meant to be camera ready, I guess. All right, the nut is on. I'm going to tighten the adjuster down the rest of the way. And I don't remember which, that wasn't it. Tighten our handle nut down. And then we only have one more screw left, and that was the one that was on the other size. So if you're grabbing a screw and it's fitting into the other driver, you know you've got the wrong screw. I think I have to reverse the throw on this one to forward. Go ahead and find the hole. Go ahead and put that in. And we should be ready to test this reel and see how we did. All right, let's give it a crank. Boy, that's nice and smooth. I know Carmen likes the leverage handles. This will pull up Davy Jones's locker. You saw how much drag was in that twin drag system. Nice easy casting. Nice smooth operation. Beautiful reel overall. It's the Accurate Tern 300 made in the USA reel. Beautiful reel overall. Lots of max drag. Definitely a reliable reel for inshore fishing. I hope you've enjoyed that. To our first responders and essential personnel, thank you for everything it is that you do to keep us safe. To everyone, please enjoy fishing. The season's coming. Find a friend, go fishing, or take a friend fishing, or take a kid fishing. Show them how to do it, and you'll have a friend for life and a fishing buddy for a long time to come. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Have a great day.